Hi, Glenn Peoples here, the People's Carpenter. I decided to break this video in two because, I'm maybe halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through, but it's starting to get quite long. So here's the first part of a project that I'm rather enjoying. It's an Edwardian-styled coat rack. See what you think. Hi, Glenn here, and welcome to the People's Carpenter. Welcome back into my workshop once more. And welcome to my next project, which is going to be a coat rack. Not a coat stand that stands in the middle of the room or wherever, but a coat rack, a rack of hooks that goes on the wall. And this one was actually suggested to me by one of my daughters. Well, I was thinking just a moment ago, I don't recall if she asked me to make it, but she said that she thought we should have one. And so I thought, well, I'll make it. She may have asked me to make it, I don't remember. But anyway, we've got a laundry in our house just by the back door. You go through the laundry to get to the back door, and there is a blank space of wall just before you exit the door, and that seemed like a good place to put a coat rack. You put your coat on before you go out the back door, and after you come in, you hang it up. So, what sort of coat rack do I want to make? Well, I've said a few times that because of the era of the house, this house was made in 1910. Not that the laundry really looks like that, but that's the kind of period I would probably go for, which is the Edwardian era in design. So, I've got some hooks here. I ordered them for this purpose. They have the sort of what we would now think of as the old school aged bronze look to them. Of course, when things like this were actually made in the early 20th century, so the turn of the century, they wouldn't have been made with these colours. These colours are made to look old. At the time, they would have just been shiny chrome finish or a gold finish. These are kind of pretentious, aren't they? But I like them, so I'm going to use them anyway. And I've got some American white oak on the racks on my wall. I'll use a piece of that. Maybe ideally it would be European oak, but I don't have any. And this actually looks quite similar to it, so I think it'll work well. Now, when it comes to design, I just sat down at my computer and typed in a Google image search, Edwardian coat rack. And that brought back a number of images that look like this. But another thing that I'm going to be doing when it comes to design, this may be controversial, but I really don't think it should be, is making use of AI. Some people have a real aversion to the use of AI images. I think that's the kind of pushback that happens every time technology advances and people aren't ready to do that. And they'll come up with ethical sounding objections for their reasoning, but ultimately I do think it's a lost battle. Now, I know that there are ways in which you shouldn't use that, but I think there are plenty of quite legitimate ways of using that. But without delving too much into that, basically what I decided to do, and I've been experimenting with this for some time, and I'll be doing this with other projects as well, is I just went into one of the AI art generator apps and I said, Edwardian oak coat rack. And I just looked at the results. And I know one of the criticisms of AI is that it just takes other people's work. It's not original. It's really stealing from people. But the truth is, when you're building what is essentially vintage-themed pieces of furniture or woodwork, that's exactly what you are doing. You're looking at other people's work from centuries gone by, and you're copying it, basically. You're saying, I want to make something that looks like that or uses these features from that, or maybe mishmashes some of them together, which is precisely what these AI image generators are doing. So I've got absolutely no problem with that. So I'll think more about exactly which design I'm going to be using, but in the meantime, I'll start prepping some of this wood. when I was cutting and milling these pieces, I noted that one of these edges was somewhat damaged, so I just made sure that I am gluing these in such a way that this is on the outside edge, because that's going to be removed when I come to put the decorative edges on this piece. Okay, so I've got my boards milled down to size. There's that rough edge, which I don't have to worry about because it will be removed. Man, back in the day, turn of the 20th century, when this sort of thing was being made, what I've just done in milling this down to size would have been a lot of work. I mean, I'm sure they got very good at it, but this is why I said at the outset of this channel that I would not be a purist and I would absolutely be using power tools. That jointer and planer saves an incredible amount of labour. Now, I've been thinking about the design that I'm going to put along this edge, which will be the bottom edge with the hooks just above it. And here too, it just makes me pause and marvel at the craftsmanship of people who lived prior to the 20th century, where we have, and still have in the 21st, electric routers. Never mind CNC machines, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to have to rough out the shape, and then I will use a router and a template to finalize it. And I'm going to make the template from this piece of MDF. There's a misconception, well, I don't know if there is a misconception, but this is a misconception that I might have entertained once when I first got into woodworking and guitar building, and that is that you build templates for things that you want to make lots of copies of in the future. And not really true. You build templates where accuracy matters and you don't want to make mistakes. Okay, let's cut this piece of MDF. So for the design, I'm not directly copying anything, but obviously I'm going to be influenced by what I've seen. I've been asking around, because I'm on a couple of Facebook woodwork groups, and I've just been showing some examples of the sorts of things that I want to produce, asking people what they know about learning resources for this sort of thing, and it really, it's a bit sad really. I mean, these days, anything like this, not that this kind of thing is produced all that much, but anything like this that was produced would be produced with a CNC machine, which is fine if all you want is the end product. A CNC machine will give it to you. But if you want to learn the craft of doing this sort of thing, where do you go? And the answer, well, for me anyway, is just Google around, see what this sort of work looks like when other people have produced it in years gone by, and have a think about it, and then do your best. So that's kind of what I've done. This is the lid for the tin that contains all the pet food in this house, all the dry pet food. I needed the round object. So there are going to be 4 hooks, one in each of these sections, and there's going to be another hole there produced by a Forstner bit. Just using the spur in the center of the bit to mark where I want it to make contact. Okay, now it's going to be a matter of carefully sanding these curves. Right, I think I'm done in terms of getting those sanded. Now I'm just going to use a piece of sandpaper and by hand reduce those points there. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, you could maybe tell if you looked really closely, but most people, I think, wouldn't be able to. When I say tell, I mean tell that it was done by human hand. Sometimes, when removing material with a router, it just seems to be going so well that you decide to go all the way with the router. And that's what I've done. Okay, well, that went well. There's going to be some further tidying up, and there's going to be some decorative routing done all around that edge, but that is going to wait. I've spent all the time in the workshop that I can today, and, well, time for me to go and have dinner. And this evening I'm going to be working on an assignment. As much as I would like to stay in here, I will break myself away for today. Back tomorrow, maybe. It's going to be a busy week. I'll be back soon. So this is coming along fairly nicely. I'm not too confident in trying my hand at doing much by way of carving just yet, but I see that in some of the examples that I was able to find in pictures, there is a decorative piece attached onto the face of this, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'll tackle that piece towards the end. I'm thinking now about the basic structure. So there's going to be a shelf on top, and I'll cut this in half, and each of these will be support pieces somewhere along here, and I have to shape those as well. But I'm just thinking of the shelf at the moment. I think I'd like that shelf to come out a little bit further, so I'm going to mill up another piece and glue that on there. So while that top shelf piece is gluing, let's turn my attention to these uprights. I don't even know, I forget if I've already said this, I don't even know if I'll put anything on the shelf, but this is how these things were made, and it looks nice to have a shelf up there. So how long do I want this? About 160 mils. As you'll know if you're aware of my other channel, I sometimes build electric guitars, and so I have a bunch of templates sitting around that have large curves on them, and I'm just going to make use of one of those. And in this case, what I'll do with these small pieces is I'll just cut one of these, and then I'll use that as the template for the second piece. So I want some stylistic continuity with this edge here. So there's going to be a convex curve here, and there's going to be a hole there, just like I've done here. And now there are two. Now it's going to be difficult, I think. In fact, it would be very difficult to use a handheld router to profile the edge. So I'll select a router bit and I'll go over to the benchtop router to create that profile.